Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Monday. Thanks again for tuning in to The Holistic Alternative. I am Julie Ann Mejia, and I'm so excited to have you guys with us today. We have a phenomenal guest joining us. He is a longtime journalist and author who has spent more than 3 decades in the cannabis community. He is a publisher of celebstoner.com, and many of you may also know some of his work from his years at High Times magazine, where he's helped shape the culture and the conversation for nearly 2 decades surrounding plant-based medicine and cannabis. He is also a recognized advocate and community leader with honors from NORML and other organizations. He has also co-authored iconic titles like Pot Culture and Reefer Movie Madness. Today, we're going to talk about cannabis culture, media advocacy, and where the industry is headed next. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome Steve Bloom to the show. Steve, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Very happy to be here.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone is excited to hear a little bit about your background. And first of all, first and foremost, how you got started working in cannabis.
Well, I had a friend who worked at High Times, and I am a publishing person. I'm in media and publishing, a writer, editor, reporter, author. You know, you follow your editors around or your friends around in publishing. They get you jobs. You know, you give them jobs. Maybe I'm an editor at some place and then they're an editor someplace else. And this particular guy named John Holmstrom was a cartoonist, was famous for Punk magazine. And he started doing some work for me when I was an editor of a magazine called Video Games in 1982. And I met him and we became friends. He started doing some cartoon reviews in video games. And then a few years later, he ended up at High Times. And 1987, I was writing another book, a sports book. I got a call from John, and he said they were looking for a news editor. And I was a music journalist, basically, up to then. And so I was a little bit outside of what I would normally do, but it was High Times. And I had been up there a few times to proofread or write a couple of stories, so I kind of knew the place a bit. So I went for it. You know, it was a part-time job. And I was able to continue doing my freelancing, but gradually, I got brought more and more into the fold at High Times to be full-time. I started to attend all the meetings, and I used to just come in 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But then they expanded my role there, and I was hired like a full-time. I started there in late 1988 in the heart of the drug war. And by 91, I was full-time, and I switched over to music and entertainment type coverage at the magazine.
That's wonderful. No, I appreciate you sharing that with everybody watching today. And, you know, what is your personal perspective? How did you start supporting cannabinoids and just cannabis in general?
Well, we didn't call it cannabis. We called it marijuana when I was growing up. You know, that's why I still like to use the word, because that's what we used and that's what we knew, or pot or whatever. But prior to calling it cannabis, you know, we were potheads. And I started when I was 15. 1969, you know, right then in the middle of great surge in, you know, counterculture activity in the US and the whole hippie movement, you know, building. And I jumped in, anti-war, hippie stuff, the whole thing. Marijuana, you know, was part of it. You know, you just smoked and kind of got in tune with each other in large concert situations or big protests. It kind of fueled us. And So I didn't really think about too much of the politics of it at all back then. We were kind of too busy trying to end the war. So that happened. And then, you know, I don't know. New York, I didn't understand the politics of pot back then. I didn't know what was legal, what was decrim, what was whatever. It was just not something, I don't know, most of us potheads didn't really know much about that stuff. I mean, I got to High Times, I learned everything, but I didn't know what state was decrim back then. I didn't know. But we did know New York State was where I live, and we did know that things were pretty lenient in New York back then. It was hard to get arrested for marijuana in New York in the 70s. It really was. It was very permissive. And then, things changed in the, Reagan era, and then later years for High Times. High Times struggled through the 80s during the Just Say No era, lost a lot of advertising because they cracked down on paraphernalia. The government did back then, made it hard for High Times. But High Times survived. Every type of effort to shut it down, High Times always survived, fortunately. And so, just worked my way to that point in my life, but that was really not what I was really planning on doing. I mean, as far as cannabis was concerned, I didn't go to the cannabis parades. I didn't really participate in anything. We were just, potheads up in the Bronx, smoking our weed and, learning what that was about. Mostly it was concert related stuff. We go to concerts and light up like everybody did when the lights went down. I'll go to the bathrooms where people would smoke in the bathrooms because, you have to be kind of careful in the venues back then. Even now, of course, but then too. So, it was just gradually learning what it was about, but we just liked it. We just liked the weed, and it just fit. We're big drinkers. If anything, we drank some Boone's Farm wine in a pouch or something. Hippies mostly just liked weed and psychedelics, and drinking was kind of secondary. So I didn't.
No, I get that. Totally.
I didn't come from a drinking family. My grandfather, my old Jewish Romanian grandfather, he liked scotch and stuff, and he had beer in the fridge, but we hardly drank. So there wasn't much of a drinking culture in my house. And as far as smoking, I mean, my dad, I think, smoked a little weed, in the 60s and stuff. But when I first smoked, I grabbed one of his pipes, and a friend of mine had given me some hash. And I said, what do I do? And he said, well, put some silver foil on the cover in the top of the pipe and poke some holes. And I live in an apartment building. I went up to the roof and by myself and tried to smoke it. Hash was too hard to smoke. I had no idea how to inhale that. I just couldn't, I don't think I could get it down, and coughed it up or whatever. Tried again. No. Second time. No, just didn't get through. I just couldn't get that hash. It was too hard to smoke. And then the third time was the charm. Friend came over from high school with a joint one day, and we smoked and rolled on the floor laughing and ate everything in the fridge, cookie dough, the whole thing. So that was my invitation. But at the same time, that day, a friend of mine knocks on the door, and he in the building, and he comes in and he smells the weed. And he's like, gets all mad at us, like, what are you doing? You're going to get in trouble. And that was the first time where I realized, okay, everybody's not going to agree with this.
No, and a lot of people start like that, right? When we're younger, we experiment.
I think back to when I was younger, that was formative for me, that we were having a good time, then the friend comes in and is kind of the buzzkill, and there'd be a lot of those buzzkills over the years. I got arrested a few times. That's a buzzkill. You're smoking some weed, next thing the cops show up. So it was a little bit like that day. My friend was sort of the cop, but we didn't get busted per se. But it was indicative that it was not going to be easy, to just use this stuff and without anybody getting in your face about it or telling you it's a bad thing or you're going to be addicted or you're a loser or go to the back of the line or whatever that stuff is, so it was welcome to that world.
Prohibition is a scary thing, and no one should ever be in prison for a plant. It's concerning when they make nature illegal. So, that's a big issue. Let's talk a little bit about some of your activism work. When you started seeing that, legislation, there was some formalities with surrounding cannabis.
Well, remember, I'm a journalist, so, but High Times allowed us to wear that other hat, the advocacy hat. Usually journalists, you don't advocate, you just write about stuff and you try and stay out of the story, unless you're writing Hunter Thompson-esque type stuff, but, just basic journalism is you're really not supposed to really include yourself so much. And High Times we did, because we were sort of on a mission, and we knew that the only point of view most Americans were getting on the drug war issues were kind of DEA, points of view. And so we needed to counter that. So we're not going to exactly include a DEA point of view in an article. They already get a lot of space. They didn't need it from High Times. And so, yeah, we just, I mean, advocacy for me, that just started at High Times, with being, High Times is close affiliation with NORML and all the other organizations, and meeting all the cool people back then, many of whom are gone. Jack Herrer, Dennis Perone, people like that. Lester Grinspoon from up in your area, neck of the woods up in Boston. So I'm lucky to have met all of them. It's kind of like, I feel like I'm old enough to have seen Jimi Hendrix. I'm old enough to have known Jack Herrer, and people like that who really, sparked this whole movement. And so that was good. At High Times, just, as a news editor, I just was going to, events a lot. I was going to NORML conferences and going to hash bashes and things like that. And, meeting John Sinclair at Hash Bash, all the major people who were alive back then. They've aged out and a lot of them have passed away, but I was lucky to meet all of them and they inspired me. High Times, it was fun for me because, as just as an editor, it was a fun place to be an editor. We had a cause, and also they allowed us to wear a lot of hats. So, and part of my advocacy was to do a series of albums called Hempilation 1 and 2, that was released by Capricorn Records, pretty major record label. And I just had this idea when I was really, really deep into the music coverage at High Times in the 90s. I saw there were a lot of benefit albums coming out, and or tribute albums. And I thought, well, why not a tribute album for marijuana or for weed? And why not a benefit for NORML, who always needed money? They're doing things for, for Greenpeace, or doing things for different organizations that are fundraisers, CDs with 10 songs or 15 songs by major artists that would help raise some money. So I kind of grabbed onto that idea. I love the album called Dedicated, which is a tribute album to the Grateful Dead. So tribute songs, and then, fundraiser, raise some money. So kind of combined the two ideas. And the 2 Hempilation albums are 37 songs with major artists performing either covers or originals. Let's just say the Black Crowes, Rainy Day Women, or Sublime doing Legalize It, or, so many different, or Blues Traveler doing I Want to Take You Higher. And they just pick songs, or as long as nobody duplicated. Some of them just went and did stuff. Some of them, asked me, what should we pick? Or it was fun to be in the middle of that. It's the only time I was on the other side of the business, doing those 2 albums, where I was actually in the record business for a minute there, producing. And so we had a team, the Capricorn folks and NORML. I had a partner with NORML, Eric Steenstra. We worked together on this project trying to, secure bands. So 3 of us were sort of going out and kind of grabbing bands. First one had 17, second one had 20. Raised about $200,000 for NORML. Scored me a lot of points up at High Times. But it was indicative of High Times let you do other stuff. I also did award shows for High Times, Stony and Doobie Awards, special events at South by Southwest every year. We'd run a party. I'd run that party. That was some of the most fun times I ever had at High Times, was going to South by Southwest every year and running the High Times party. So I got to do a lot of stuff. I mean, High Times is a little bit difficult when it came to doing these things, because they didn't want to spend. So you really had to cajole them to send you places. They wanted you to bring back money. We always brought back money from the Boston Freedom Rally, but other places not so much. So we come down a wad of money and just give it to them and say, okay, you see, we made you some money. It justified the trip.
No, that's amazing. And the Boston Freedom Rally, has been around for so long, and it's a big movement within our New England area in Boston, and it's synopsis for the industry. So it's a beautiful event. I'm so glad that you could be a part of all of that, and especially helping raise money for those affected by the war on drugs. What else have you been working with during that time period with NORML? Were there any big cases or advocacy work that you did to kind of raise awareness during that time period with NORML?
Not really. I mean, it was just general. I mean, we did it as a team. It wasn't just me. I mean, I had a good relationship with NORML, but so many of us at the office did as well. So we all did our part. A guy like Rick Cusick, who ran the auctions for NORML and raised them significant money. I mean, he was great. Rick, awesome guy. And, so everybody pitched in. It wasn't anywhere just me. What the fun thing for me was being like a liaison to certain organizations, especially in the music world. I became the liaison to the Marley family. What fun that is, right? I know most of the Marley family members, and I still know them, and I'm pretty friendly with Ziggy. And so, you know, so I just kind of like, okay, I'm going to do that. I mean, the Grateful Dead organization, which, you know, I was covering Dead stuff, but they weren't friendly to High Times. The Marleys loved High Times. The Dead were grouchy about High Times. They had some old history with High Times, and they had some piss-offs way before we ever got there. I could never get around their piss-offs. They stuck me for tickets. They wouldn't even give me, I mean, barely. They were really, I loved the Dead, but boy, they were not friendly to High Times in those years.
There's so much drama that goes on behind scenes in the cannabis space. You know, it is the Wild West sometimes, you know,
Right.
looking at it from other industries. So I'm sure there's a lot that happens. So, you know, you took some time apart from High Times. Let's talk about some of your other work after High Times, and then we can kind of recoup. You're reworking with them again. So let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, I left High Times in 2007. Had a little dispute with them over some things. I wrote my pop culture book. They weren't happy about that. They wanted control over that book, and I couldn't give them that control. So I left High Times after close to 20 years, and I didn't really have anything came to me initially. You know, kind of painted in a kind of weak corner a little bit. Really couldn't get back out to music journalism too easily. And there really weren't a lot of jobs out there. There weren't a lot of magazine jobs. You know, there weren't that many websites back in the early 2000s. Substoner was one of the first back in 2007. So there really weren't a lot of opportunities. I just dove into Substoner and just did that. You know, that was my main thing. Coming out of High Times, Substoner was sort of an adjunct to what I did at High Times, celebrity coverage. You know, bands, music, movies, that kind of stuff. Try and bring celebrities to the cover. They were always a tough sell at High Times because, by and large, they much rather put a pot plant on the cover, which sort of a given guarantee that it will sell, versus a celebrity that you never know. Celebrities are hit and miss. You know, you can put Willie on the cover and maybe they'll love it, maybe they won't. Put Snoop, maybe they will. Cypress Hill was a surprise. Nobody knew them and they loved the cover, so you never knew. But High Times was kind of a creature of like repetition, and if one thing worked, we'll do it again. And those week covers always generally worked. So I was just knocking on the door a lot to try and get the celebrities, you know, on the cover, and you know, and kind of diversify High Times a little bit. So it's not only the weed image, like even on a newsstand, you might, or in a Barnes and Noble, you might find it in a gardening section instead of somewhere buried like in the tattoos or something, or you find it in a music section if you have like Ziggy Marley on the cover. So it opened up the doors a little bit, even though the sales often weren't as good in general because the fans just wanted their luscious buds on the cover, which I was okay with that. It was like, you can eight times a year, you can get your buds. 4 times a year, we're going to give you an important celebrity, you know, or at least I've got my wish.
No, and you make a great point in regards to Cypress Hill, right? You really bridged that kind of gap with cannabis and hip hop. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get back to what I'm doing at High Times now in a minute, but well, I mean, you know, it was a pretty white activist movement at the time when I joined it. You know, mostly white male, and more women came along and did their thing, but it really wasn't very inviting to people of color, or maybe the effort wasn't really made. Just hope people show up, but you have to make an effort, right? And so this was not a conscious effort. It just dropped in our lap. I mean, you know, I took over the music editing in around 92, and Cypress Hill was just breaking 91, 92. And the record company reached out to me. Remember, I was a music journalist, so I had contacts in the music industry before that. So people knew me, and they go, "Oh, you're at High Times now. Okay, we'll call you about something we think is good for High Times." So that one day I got a call from the publicist at Columbia saying, "Hey, we got a band for you, Cypress Hill." Didn't know them, sent me the music, thought it was good. And that's the beginning of a beautiful relationship with those guys. But yeah, that cover was popular. And then we followed with Redman on the cover. We started to do like a hip hop issue a year, at least one. And then we'd have coverage in each issue, maybe not a hip hop article every issue, but we'd have cover. You know, we'd do some stories inside the magazine, not necessarily on the cover. But we would look for cover artists. And, you know, Redman became our star in the next year. And then a few years later, we had Wu-Tang and Method Man on the cover. And so we were just moving in that direction. And clearly that opened the door to those who may not have known High Times in the hip hop world and saw a cool photo of Method Man with a blunt on the cover of High Times, and they went for that. You know, oh, God, that's, you know, it's cool. So people may not have known High Times yet, but they saw that. and they started to maybe pick up a few more high times, especially when we did the hip hop stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was a bridge. I mean, I like to take some credit, that we helped build a bridge, at High Times to, expand and diversify the movement, bring in more people of color, and that was certainly one way to do it.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate, the efforts for that. I think, the war on drugs specifically targeted people of color. So, it's great to have a diversified audience and people that you're approaching the magazine with. So that's wonderful.
I always thought they should have been a magazine like called Blunt. High Times should have done a magazine like a spin-off hip hop magazine that's all hip hop and weed and blunts and stuff. And never did it. They wouldn't necessarily listen to my ideas when it comes to things like that. But to really zero, I mean, there already were magazines like The Source, but The Source was very weed friendly, but not a weed magazine. It was a hip hop magazine. So if you did a hip hop weed magazine, then you put it all together. I don't think anybody ever really did that.
Well,
there might have been a few out there that tried, but nothing that lasted. So
there's always time, Steve.
Well, so I'm not doing that. But by the way, so as far as my current stuff, so I was away from High Times from 2007 till recently. High Times has gone through a lot of changes during those years. Was bought by a guy who ran the company into the ground and created enormous debt that led to the High Times going to receivership and being sold last year to Josh Kesselman of Raw for $3.5 million, which is the steal of the century. And High Times was so degraded in terms of what they did to it that it went for very little. And so lucky him. And it's good that it's in his hands because he's a real dude. He's a real believer and a great promoter and marketer kind of guy. And the team they're building has been good. And I've been sort of, just consulting. Sometimes they don't know their history that well and they need a little advice from the older people who know things. So I'll peep in the ear of them and their editor, Javier Haas, who's a really good guy. And I've been impressed with Javier's work over the years, and he was a good guy to go to bring him into High Times. A very good move. They got really good content, and he's really working his butt off. I mean, he's putting out 5 stories a day. It's a lot of work. And so High Times is rebuilding, and so Javier had said to me, well, if you want to do something writing, let me know. And I didn't have anything right off the top of the bat I wanted to write off the hand. I just, I'll wait and see what fits for me. And at High Times, I wrote a book called Reefer Movie Madness, which you mentioned, the Ultimate Stoner Film Guide. That was the second in a series of books I did with Charlie Halperin. The first was Pop Culture A to Z Guide to Stoner Language and Life. And so, yeah, I just wanted to sort of bring more attention, to that book. And so I had that background of doing all that movie kind of stuff. I kind of didn't coin the term stoner movies. It was out there, but I popularized it at High Times and try to define it so people really understand what it even means. Stoner movie just a haha movie, or is it a serious movie? Is it just 2 guys going on a crazy, adventure like Harold and Kumar, or is it heavier, movies where people are putting needles in their arms? Right. It could be a lot of different things. I consider a drug movie, a stoner movie, a movie that includes any kind of drug. And even if you're high, like on Drugstore Cowboy, it's a stoner movie. They're just high on different drugs. It's heavier. It's, you could die on it, but it's reality of that's the drug profile, and that's how people act, and sometimes, and they show how you kind of behave in movies. So basically, I've been covering this stuff ever since. I use Celeb Stoner, constant movie reviews. One of the most popular features at Celeb Stoner is always the year-end movie reviews. I review like 30 movies that are stoner themed movies, and it's always very popular. So it's one of the things I really like to cover. And also TV, not just movies, also all the streamers out there now, all the content, on streamers looking for drug-related content, and then write about that. So I basically have sort of, kind of grabbing that space at High Times to do some stoner movie coverage. And my first 2 articles, one is about Marty Supreme, the movie that's out now, the ping pong movie with Timothée Chalamet. And in that movie, his uncle in the shoe store is played by a guy named Larry Ratso Sloman, who was a former editor of High Times, going back to the 70s and 80s. So I thought that would be a good little item for High Times. I pitched that to Javier. He liked it. So I did that. It was my first comeback article in 18 years. And then I pitched him on a Jim Belushi article. I've met Jim a couple of times over the years. I've interviewed him a couple of times. Really good guy. And so he's in a movie now as well. He plays Ken Kesey in Kristen Stewart's Chronology of Water, The Chronology of Water. It's a really heavy movie. And later in the movie, the lead protagonist, the woman who the story's about, she goes to the writers program at University of Oregon and under Kesey back in the 80s, and he became her mentor. So he's in a couple of movies now. He's in Song Song Blue. And I kind of wanted to do sort of a movie article with him, not just a weed business article, which is he's involved in, because he's in tons of movies in the 80s and 90s, and he's having a kind of a bit of a rebirth now, being in those two movies, and so I just basically asked for an interview with him. I work with Zoe Wilder, and I could have gone directly to him because I'm friendly with him, but I just set it up with her. And at first I was just going to do it for Celeb Stoner. I thought maybe Javier will want that, and he did. So he grabbed it, and so I don't know what my next one is. I have an idea I pitched him, but we'll see. Because I kind of want to work that area. I mean, other things I could write for him, and I want to say High Times is paying okay too. Within the range of what you should get paid for an article, because I write for the Hollywood Reporter or Variety, and it's about the same rate. And those companies are much bigger than High Times. So High Times is fairly, but people who I've been suggesting, they come to me and say, hey, I want to do some High Time. Who do I contact? Say Javier at hightimes.com. Go for it, because he's looking for stuff.
No, that's great. And I'm so excited to see, what you write about Jim. He's a wonderful human being. I got to meet him and spend some time with him at the Harvest Cup a few years back. And he's a big supporter of veterans. He, does a lot for the veteran community and just very down to earth. So I look forward to reading that and checking that out.
Well, it's out now. I mean, it's a High Times. Just do it. I'll send it to you later. Yeah,
I'd love to check it out. I appreciate it. So what are the other writings that you're doing? I know you're also on Substack as well. Is that correct?
No, I'm not on Substack. I'm on Patreon. So,
Okay.
so what I've been doing with Celeb Stoner in the last 6 months or so is moving, not moving the site. The site is, loaded down with stuff going back 15 years. No, I'm just using Patreon more to post articles. I just like the interface, and the goal there at Patreon is to have people subscribe. And so I do a newsletter every week, newsletter related to, Celeb Stoner type subjects, what's happening with the celebrities, what movies are they in, what albums are coming out. Also, politics. I mean, this week's newsletter was, my lead was the New York Times. Thank you. The New York Times article last week that questioned the direction of legalization, and they kind of said, oops, we were wrong. We shouldn't have promoted legalization. Things have gone the wrong way. And so that was my lead. So I'll comment on whatever I want to comment on, but what's in the zeitgeist. What are people thinking about the most that week? And then I fill it out with other fun Celeb Stoner stuff. So I always look for a good lead. So I do that as well. That's once a week, sometime during the week. And then like today, I'm working on an article about Dana Beal, who's heading to Idaho to go to jail on a charge of possession. And they had a going away party for him in New York. Dana Beal is a longtime cannabis activist and based in New York, and one of the founders of the Cannabis Parade. And so I'm going to do an article. He had a going away, and he gave a little speech yesterday. I'm going to transcribe that and put that up at Celeb Stoner. At Patreon. And so that's where I'm putting my new content. I update the old content. I do certain things like a calendar that stays up at Celeb Stoner, or the movie reviews and stuff, but I'm using Patreon more. So I'm encouraging people to come to Patreon at Celeb Stoner and join. The joining can involve paying or not. It's free, like Substack. You can pay, or you can, just read it for free. But it's kind of one of the only ways I'm finding to really monetize my website these days, because advertising is not great. Hasn't been for years. And with legalization, with all the weird advertising rules, nobody advertises. So Patreon has a formula, that you can actually make some money if people want to kick down. And I'm happy when people do. I have about 300 people on that group. It's a group. And it's a unique group, and it's a special group of people who have signed up to support me. A lot of good people in that group. It's a really, solid group of people who you might want to communicate with each other, and they can within the group. But so anyway, that's my form. That's my way now. I'm still, so let's start. A website is a little old, and it's not really as easy to read as I like it to be. And we really have not decided to upgrade it. Just let it be, and then move the content over to Patreon, or post the content at Patreon now, and encourage people to join. be part of the group.
That's wonderful. And it's really all about creating community and finding your tribe within the space. So I thank you for that effort. It's needed.
You got to stick at it. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
People get impatient. They go, oh, I don't have any new followers this week, or nobody signed up. Just like, so what? Just they'll come later or whatever. As long as you keep posting stuff and letting people know that you're looking for group members and stuff, and just pester people a little bit. I mean, every time I send out any kind of post, it's always like, please join our group at Patreon. Just like a mantra, say it over and over again, and keep doing it. And my advice to anybody out there who might be frustrated, they don't think it's successful, or for me it is, because it's a slow build. And when people sign up, they don't really quit so fast. Either they forget it because they have a subscription, they don't remember, or they just hold on to it. So I don't lose too many people. Once people sign up, they hang around. I have a lot of people who start up from day one, and they're still there. You lose a few people here and there. People, cut back on their subs. They decide they're not making, they lost a job. They don't have as much money to pay on things right now. I never begrudge anybody for coming or going. It's like, or going or coming. If you've got to leave, thanks for being there, and thanks for whatever you gave. And maybe you'll come back. But if you stay free, you'll still see everything. So, but those who aren't free, those are the ones who are really the supporters. Those are who understand the term patronage. That you're helping somebody out, you're supporting somebody's creative work. So I don't think I often mention Patreon to people. Oh, Patreon, what? They know Substack, because Substack's kind of caught on more. But people ask me about Substack and stuff, and I say, well, I'm in Patreon. I'm doing okay there. It works for me for my website. And when I want to write something else that's off topic of, say, cannabis, I have Medium. I have a Medium account. I have 100 articles at Medium easily. Medium I use for music stuff, or older articles that I transcribe that I might have written for Rolling Stone or whomever. I just want to put it up there so people can read it now, because otherwise it's just in a Xerox copy or an old newspaper copy that's clipped. So I try to use up that. But honestly, Medium is a very hard place to make money. So I don't know if people are making money on Substack, and I hope they are. But I've found that you can make money on Patreon, but Medium,
not so much.
It's a complete mystery.
Gotcha.
Or scam. But I'm not down on Medium, but I know people there make money, but it's like, how is really the question. So what I've learned at Medium is you need to publish your articles at publications within Medium.
Gotcha. That's great advice for any writer.
Fanfare. It's a movie review site, and I found that not too long ago, and pitched them on an article too. And then they generally, if I'm interested in something, it's like almost useless to post something without it going through one of their publications, because they might have 25,000 followers and it'll get out to their people. But if you just send it out and you only have 200 people or something, that's only people are going to see it, except for those who might see it through social media. It's very hard. I mean, making $10 an article is like a dream at Medium.
No, I totally get it. And I appreciate, the knowledge for any writer that's listening.
I warn people, I use it for my purposes, but if you think you're going to make money on it, good luck.
No, I appreciate the bluntness and pun intended on that.
Oh, it's very humbling to get paid $2.12 for an article,
Right? With AI, and we talked about this privately, like, what are your thoughts on AI in regards to journalism these days? Because
it's just the things out there. It's such a guessing game now, what's real and what's not. I saw a video today, Snoop Dogg, Damian Marley, and Wiz Khalifa. I swear the whole thing seemed totally fake. It's a great
Well, they do have an AI brand that they have.
What?
They have an AI brand. Snoop has his own AI brand.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm saying it looked like total AI. AI kind of doesn't look like the real people to begin with. So you can always tell AI because it's a little off. And but on that, you have to just really be careful of deep fakes and stuff with AI. That's a major problem. And on the writing side, obviously, I guess people can just use it and and swap it out for what they might write, which is cheating. I'm not sure if it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure, what the rules are on that yet, but what I do like is AI searching. I think AI searches are good and they're really helpful. I don't use AI for anything else right now except for searches. And that's only because when I do a search, it pops up AI search. And they have a
Right.
deeper search that you crawl through, then you go to some other things. But they're helpful. They're really good introductions to whatever it is you're looking for, and usually pretty accurate. So I like that. So I mean, there's benefits. You know, I haven't
No,
really
of
dove in,
course.
I haven't really dove in too much, but there are benefits. I'm not
No, I
afraid. I'm not
appreciate
afraid
you
of
saying
AI. I don't like all the fakes and all the and people, you know, using it to write their stuff when they're not really writing. And so, you know, so much for you being a writer, you know,
that.
when it's doing it
Exactly.
for you. So
Exactly.
so then that's the stuff, and knowing which is and which isn't is kind of an issue. But it hasn't popped up for me, you know, in my work yet in terms of, say, articles that might have been submitted, but the person didn't really write it, you know, and they did an AI. I don't have that many contributors, so I haven't really have any issues yet.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts on that. And it's crazy. This has flown by. We have 4 minutes left to this segment. I really want people to know and get some thoughts. Where are your thoughts about where the industry is heading with the craziness going on with legalities of rescheduling and stuff like that? What do you
Yeah.
want to leave people with today
Well, I mean,
about the
you know,
industry?
rescheduling. I mean, you know, most advocates want descheduling, and but it's not realistic in this Trump environment. You know, and even why Trump did this is kind of peculiar. You know, I steal the issue from Biden, people peeping in his ear about CBD, which I think he's probably using, and so Trump is so peculiar. You never quite know what motivates him. So, but the concern now is that he made the big move, he did the executive order, and now he's forgotten about it. And certainly, you know, the Justice Department and DA probably would rather not do it. So if he doesn't keep pushing them, I guess it's going to drag out. And somewhere along the way, you know, someone will peep in his ear and say, "Hey, you better do this because you said you were." I just think he wanted to steal it from Biden. Biden did the same thing. You know, Biden proposed Schedule 3. He just ran into the DEA wall. Difference with Trump is that Trump bullies everyone. Biden wasn't a bully, so Biden wouldn't bully the DEA to make it happen. And the DEA, you know, because Biden wasn't tough enough, you know, let the DEA kind of stonewall it. I'm in favor of it, better than nothing. You know, I mean, I know activists out there will say, no, no, no. Well, we don't have a choice. You know, they're not giving us a choice, you know, so it's not up to us. It's up to them. We can push back as much as we want, but that's their decisions. And that decision was a reschedule and not a deschedule. So accept it and take it for what it is. Better than one. So, so that's good news. And by and large, the average person out there, unlike us who are deep in the weeds on this issue, don't know or care or understand the distinctions. All they know is that they're changing the law favorably for marijuana use and users. That's all people understand. That's good. What are the changes? Kind of minimal, you know? So, so the concern is that it gets done instead of it being a big bullshit scam by Trump just to score whatever points he was trying to score. Finish the job on this one, Trump. And on the other end, the hemp ban, you know, I take a different stand on it. I don't like those products. I think there's plenty of THC to go around. You don't have to create THC from CBD. I think the hemp industry has to really tone it down. There's a lot of other things you can do with hemp than make soda out of. So cut the crap with the soda and all this stuff and start using hemp the way it should be used for, you know, fiber and fuel and shirts and rope and paper. Come on, people, get it together and have a really good hemp industry, you know, that Jack Herer begged for. And I think he'd be disappointed what he's seen in the way the hemp industry has evolved, that it's all about sodas, you know, that's not
No,
utility.
I appreciate that. I
Utility.
appreciate your thoughts.
It's a joke. And so I don't support, I hope the hemp ban goes through. I'm going to say it straight here. I'm not for, you know, the hemp industry wants to derail the hemp ban. I'm in favor of it, you know, until they get off their synthetic crap and stop feeding us this stuff. I'm against it. And so, even the industry, you know, Willie Nelson charging ahead with that stuff, the Chicago arena that just made a deal, you know, to have it, you know, they're all going against the law right now. I mean, okay, we go against the law all the time with marijuana, but, you know, when it comes to like protesting prohibition, but I don't favor going out against the law on this. I don't care about these hemp drinks and being available in illegal states. I just don't care. You know, it doesn't matter to me. I don't drink it. I don't need it. It's only in those places because they're not legal yet, you know, and they have to go around and sneak around in the corners. and sell us stuff that's not even tested and ends up in gas stations and shit. So I'm just saying, I'm not for it. And I hope the industry will get it through their thick head that it's not good for people and clean up their act.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate your thoughts on everything. And if people want to read more of your articles or they want to contribute and become a subscriber, how can they get in touch with you directly?
People can find me, they can DM me at Facebook, and that's probably a good way to get to me directly, as opposed to giving out any more, personal information here. So I'm easy to find. And of course, if you go through the Patreon, you can message me there. So there's various ways, Celeb Stoner, all kinds of ways in social media. But I would say I'm easy to find on Facebook. Anybody can DM me on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. It was wonderful having you, and I appreciate your time.
Hey, great questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve. Take care. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please spread love and kindness everywhere you go, and tune in another 4 weeks for another beautiful episode on the Holistic Alternative. Thank you.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care: How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCram-Perkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.